I'm Steve Feldman. I'm a professor of dermatology across the road. I got hired at Wake Forest University 20 years ago. My test tube research career failed utterly miserably. Fortunately, I started doing more socioeconomic kinds of research issues, and that career took off. Now, what I'm going to share with you today is talks about the way medicine, and not just medicine, but the way a lot of the world is organized into different compartments, people in different groups, and how the people in different groups can often have very warped ideas because of the compartments there. I imagine, like I'm in a shoebox. I think of that I'm in a shoebox. I'm in the dermatologist's shoebox. Actually, it's the Wake Forest University dermatology shoebox. And there's walls. There's things I don't see about people in other groups. Things I don't know about the family doctors or about my patients. And being in this box, the walls of this box that I'm in limit my ability to know what's going on in other groups. It makes the stuff I do see in other groups not necessarily representative. And the people in my box have a way of viewing the world that may not be the same as the way people in another box view the world. And I'm going to talk about how these factors, these three factors, the things you don't see about other people, the things you do see that aren't representative, and how your group has a way of looking at the world, affects our decision makings, affects how we understand other people. And, we hold a lot of strongly held ideas. Some of the things I'm going to tell you may sound totally goofy. That may sound totally at odds with the way you see the world right now. And I'm hoping that will be true, because if I don't tell you something new and different, then how helpful was this? Okay, so we're in shoebox, right? We're in one shoebox, and there's things we don't see about other folks. And I think one of the most valuable examples of this is the doctor's shoebox versus the patient's shoebox. All right, so I'm a dermatologist. God, I see tons of people. One day a week I go to Mount Airy and see patients. I went there this morning. I ended clinic early because I was coming here. So I only saw patients from 8 to 10. So I saw 20 folks. All right, so I see a lot of folks. I prescribed a lot of medicine this morning. Patients go home, and I don't actually know what they're doing with their medicine. Now, the people who taught me dermatology made some assumptions about how well people were using their medicines, assumptions that weren't entirely true. One of my research colleagues, fabulous fellow Raj Balkrishnan, was here for a few years. Now he's at the University of Michigan. He told me about a company in California that makes these special medicine bottle caps. And these bottle caps contain computer chips. And they record the day and times when patients open and close the bottles. Oh, that's interesting. You like that idea. We're in our compartment, and the patients are in their compartment. We prescribe a medicine. They go home and they take it, and in their compartment, we might assume that because their disease bothers them or because they don't want to go blind or lose their legs that they might use the medicine. But in fact, we don't really know whether they're using the medicine or not. Now, the first study we did, we would tell people, put this medicine on twice a day. We're going to monitor your use of the medicine. So fill out this daily diary and bring the bottles back for us to weigh. So you can see we were entirely honest with them. We told them we were monitoring them. We didn't mention the computer chips. All right? So here's a daily diary. Somebody who's very obsessive compulsive, filling it out to the nearest 5 minutes. If they took Advil in addition to the medicine I prescribed, they wrote that in too. I mean, it's pretty good. And this person used the medicine according to the computer chips pretty much twice a day. They opened and closed that bottle just like they were supposed to. All right? Here's another diary that we got from a patient. Now, they say they use the medicine twice a day. They weren't quite as compulsive about the exact time that they used the medicine. Looks like they used the same pen the whole month. In fact, it kind of looks like what it might look like if they were filling it out in the car all at once right before they came in for the visit, doesn't it? All right. Now, here's what they actually did according to the computer chip. You can see they hardly opened the bottle at all. And they lied about it. I know it's hard to believe, but patients aren't always entirely truthful with us. Being in dermatology, I take care of a lot of patients with inflammatory skin diseases. I'm the expert on psoriasis. I treat people with topical cortisone medicines all the time. And what I was taught by my professors when I was in training at Duke and Chapel Hill, both places, was that these cortisone medicines are great, but the more you use them, the less they work. Something we call tachyphylaxis. They work fine at first, but gradually the body becomes resistant. They stop working. And for 10 years, that's what I taught the residents at Wake Forest. Then we did a study. We gave 30 psoriasis patients medication to apply twice a day. Here's each day of this 8-week study. Here's their use of the medicine on each day. The blue dots being what they said they did in their treatment diaries, and the pink dots being the average for the group of 30 patients and what they actually did according to the computer chips. And you'll notice that those two lines aren't the same, okay? Yeah. And that the use of the medicine is dropping rather steadily. I mean, the data's a little noisy. It's dropping steadily at a rate of about 20% every 5 weeks. So what does that mean? In 25 weeks, the compliance should go to 0. So in about 6 months, the compliance should go to 0. I now have a term for this. I call this tachyphylaxis. That it was what they taught me, that the more you use the steroids, the less they work, isn't true. What's actually happening is the less you use the steroids, the less they work. And it makes perfect sense. It explains all sorts of phenomena in dermatology that didn't used to make any sense. Where you take a kid with eczema and you give them a medium potency or low potency topical steroid until they develop tachyphylaxis and it would stop working. And then you'd switch them to a different brand, but also a similarly low potency or medium potency. You wouldn't raise the strength of the steroid, just switch them to a different brand and it would work fine. Well, because they started using the medicine. Yeah. Or another thing they told us, we would take kids with totally resistant eczema. I mean, we have pediatricians in the room. Kids with totally resistant eczema would not get better with any topical steroid, oral medicines, light therapy. Nothing would make the kid better on an outpatient basis. You admit them to the hospital on Friday night. You put the topical cortisone mid-potency steroid on them over the weekend. And on Sunday night, you just charge them completely clear. I mean, it was like a miracle. And they taught us stuff like, the reason they get better is because when you hospitalize the child, you take the child away from the stress of the home environment. Like, what? I mean, I believed it. I used to tell people this, and it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever that the hospital was somehow less stressful for a kid than his own bed. The neat thing about this is that we had geniuses teaching us this stuff. Professors of dermatology, who were the most caring, thoughtful, brightest people you could hope to find. And what they were teaching was backwards, was completely and utterly wrong. And it wasn't because they were uncaring, and it wasn't because they were stupid. But they were making assumptions about people in another group. They didn't have this window on what was happening in the other compartment. And when you learn from people in your compartment what's going on in another compartment, you can get some really, really warped ideas. This came up in the field of dermatology for us when surgeons and anesthesiologists wanted to pass rules requiring that doctors have hospital privileges before you could do surgery in your office. And we dermatologists, we do a lot of cosmetic surgery. We're very good at it. I told you I was doing socioeconomic research. I was writing papers about the level of experience dermatologists have, the quality of the surgeries we do. And here, the surgeons and the anesthesiologists are trying to cut us out of the cosmetic surgery arena, because, they want the money. And they don't want us doing the surgeries, in our offices. Because, we're not in the hospital. We don't even have hospital privileges. So immediately this would cut us out from doing the cosmetic surgery. And these greedy surgeons and anesthesiologists, it is horrible. I don't know if we have any of those in here. Well, one day I went and talked to one of the surgeons and one of the anesthesiologists. And what I found was when I asked the surgeon, why are you doing this to us? He's like, oh, you guys do surgery? Oh, I hadn't even thought about you guys. What we were worried about was if we're operating in the hospital and one of our colleagues is operating drunk, we take away his hospital privileges. We don't want him going across the street and practicing drunk in his office. So if you lose your hospital privileges, you shouldn't be able to do surgery in your office. What you guys do in dermatology, the minor stuff that you do, just go ahead, keep doing it. We don't care about that. And the anesthesiologists, similarly, I talked to them, and dermatologists as a community thought, oh, these anesthesiologists, they know when we do stuff in our offices that they don't have any, they're not involved, they don't want us doing it, they want the business in the ORs. Well, we talked to the anesthesiologists, and it was absolutely clear that anesthesiologists had this tremendous devotion to patient safety. And they were like, well, look, if anesthesia needs to be done safely, we've done all this work over the last decade to make anesthesia in the OR incredibly safe. We just want that kind of safety in the office. And what you guys are doing under local, who cares about that? I mean, that's irrelevant to what we're talking about. So, dermatologists' understanding of these other people was just completely wrong. Because we weren't talking to them. We were in a different group. It's good to talk to folks before you ascribe to them especially bad motivations. People often have good motivations, but it wouldn't be clear at all. Now, I hope y'all don't mind if I veer off into socio-political issues, in the context of this talk. I went to an event that our Congresswoman Virginia Foxx held for physicians. Boy, I tell you, one thing that was absolutely clear from listening to her was the utter devotion that she has to our country. Absolutely, in freedom and American values. No question about it. I don't know, when you talk to somebody, and you may think, oh, politicians, they're a greedy, corrupt bunch of folks, okay? That's an assumption you're making about people who exist in a different compartment. If you talk to one, or maybe if you live with one, you would have a completely different impression of it. But one of the things she told me was really striking to me, and that was that she thought that Obama was elected because the people who voted for him felt entitled to handouts from the government. That they voted for him because they want government handouts. Does anybody believe that? There's some people who believe that. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll tell you something. I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty confident that she was not one of the people who voted for Obama. Okay? So if you just imagine our compartments, there is a compartment of people who voted for Obama, and then a compartment of people who didn't vote for him, and she's probably not in the compartment of people who voted for him. And so her knowledge of what they're like may be completely wrong. Okay? I may be a registered Republican, I happen to vote for Obama, but it wasn't because I want a handout from the government. So I suspect that, her understanding of this could be very warped. Okay? But I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we go. Okay, so part one, there's the other compartments in our world, not just in medicine, but certainly in medicine, but in every, you got the salespeople and the marketing people in companies, you got your neighbors in their own little boxes, and everywhere you look, you got to be thinking about compartments and what we don't know about people in other groups. Don't jump to conclusions about them. Now I'm going to talk to you about something that's really kind of even more interesting, and that is the things we do see about other people and how we can be misled by what we see about others. This is, basically bias. Selection bias is when you see the numerator of things, but you don't see the denominator. In dermatology, the great professors of dermatology were always teaching us, and then again I taught my residents, that if you had a patient with psoriasis, you would never, ever give that patient systemic steroids, prednisone, for their psoriasis, because you will cause a pustular flare to develop. Okay? And here's the thing. They never prescribed systemic steroids to patients because pustular flares would develop. But people in the community would do it. And then they'd get pustular flares. And those patients with pustular flares would be sent to the academic medical center. And these pointy-headed professors of dermatology would say, told you so. That guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's giving people systemic steroids and he's causing pustular flares. Well, here's the thing. these professors of dermatology don't see any of the patients who got systemic steroids for psoriasis and didn't develop a pustular flare, right? So all the people with psoriasis who get a bad case of poison ivy and get systemic steroids from their primary care doctor and nothing happened to their psoriasis didn't go to the academic dermatologist, right? So they missed all those. And all the times the rheumatologist gave the patient systemic steroids for a hot, swollen joint, and the joint cleared up and the psoriasis didn't flare up, those patients didn't go to the dermatologist. So it was probably maybe, I don't know, one time out of 1,000. Maybe it was one time out of 10,000 that a patient would get a pustular flare. But those were the only ones the academic dermatologist saw, so they thought these flares happened all the time. This has dramatic effects on how we perceive people in different groups. I take care of psoriasis patients. I have an ultraviolet light box in my office that I can use to treat psoriasis. Ultraviolet light treatment's been used for how long to treat psoriasis? Probably for thousands of years. So presumably when the Bible said they sent the people with leprosy out into the desert and they cleared up, they were treating psoriasis with ultraviolet light. And I go around, I give lectures to dermatologists funded by different companies and such. And despite the fact that they're funding me to talk about biologics, I'll tell them first thing you would do is treat with phototherapy. And you can treat with your office light box, or if a patient can't come to your office for light treatments, you could prescribe a home light unit. Very effective, very cost effective. And if you can't do that, you could always send people to a tanning bed. Now, you might imagine that talking to dermatologists about the positive benefits of a tanning bed is like asking them to throw tomatoes at you, you know? And some of these dermatologists will say, Feldman, you've said some crazy things already about tachyphylaxis, but now you have totally overstepped your bounds, because tanning beds, not only are they evil and bad for you, they don't work for psoriasis. Let's examine this for a moment, a little mental experiment. Let's say you had a light box. You're a dermatologist in the community. You're not telling people to go to a tanning bed because you have a light box in your office. And you take 10 people with psoriasis and you put them in your office light box. We're going to assume for the moment the light box is 80% effective at clearing psoriasis. How many of the 10 people will you see clear up? Did I hear anybody say 8? 8. Correct. Very good. All right. Let's assume for the moment that there's a tanning bed down the street from you. All right? And you're not sending patients there, but let's assume for the moment that it's also 80% effective. I'm not saying that tanning is the same as office light treatment. I'm just saying, in theory, assuming the tanning bed were 80% effective. If you're that dermatologist in the community and you see 10 people who tried that 80% effective tanning bed for their psoriasis, how many would be clear?
None.
I'm sorry, how many?
None.
None. Anybody else have another answer? 8. Now, the guy who said none is absolutely right. Because all the ones who clear aren't going to go to the dermatologist. They're clear, right? That dermatologist is going to see patient after patient who tried the tanning bed, 10 in a row, and not a single one will say they're cleared up. He's not going to say, Feldman, I don't think tanning beds don't work. He's going to say, Feldman, I know they don't work. See, patient after patient who tried them, not a single one was even happy with the results. I tell you, I've seen hundreds of kids for acne who've tried Proactive. Okay? Hundreds of them. I've not seen a single one who was cleared up with that stuff. I've not seen a single one who was even happy with the results. Why does the FDA let them sell that stuff? Why do they let them advertise it? It never works, in my experience. Okay? Because all the people who try it, who clear up, they don't come see me for their acne. I got patients who see me for warts. Warts to dermatologists, if I'm not mistaken, is like fibromyalgia to a rheumatologist. Okay? We do not want your wart patients. You may keep them. But now, I freeze them. It's painful. I've got this liquid nitrogen stuff. Now they're selling this over-the-counter freeze spray that's not nearly as cold as the liquid nitrogen I use. The liquid nitrogen I use sometimes works. But I've seen, a dozen patients already for warts who've tried that over-the-counter stuff, and not a single one was cleared up. I think most dermatologists think the stuff doesn't work because it's not as cold as the liquid nitrogen. Of course, all the people who tried it and their warts go away don't come see me for warts. So I will never see warts gone away with. This is a phenomenally powerful bias. I've been practicing at Wake Forest for 20 years. I've seen thousands of patients referred by the family physicians. Oh my God. Oh my God. They send me patients where they made the wrong diagnosis. They send me patients where they've given people the wrong treatment. I've seen patients from the family docs and the internists who were given treatments that made things worse. I've seen that lots of times. I think I can still count on one hand the number of times I saw a patient for a rash that those jokers in family medicine managed to cure. All right? Now, it seems to most dermatologists that if you have a skin problem, you'd be insane to go to a family doc. Because every patient they've ever seen who saw the family doc was either inadequately treated or screwed up worse, one way or the other. Okay? What we don't tend to realize is that every time the family doctor makes the right diagnosis and gives the right treatment and the patient gets well, they don't send them to the dermatologist. You can see that we would get a really warped impression. I'll tell you, I've seen many patients who've seen another dermatologist in town. Okay? Now, some of them switched dermatologists because of a change in insurance. But other than that, I've yet to see a patient who was entirely happy with the results of the care they got from another dermatologist in town. Okay? Some people would look at that experience and go, you don't want to go to another dermatologist in town. So they're not very effective at getting their patients cleared up. Okay? I know there's at least one other dermatologist in this room. And I know that his experience is every patient who saw Feldman was unhappy with the care he got. Every patient that he saw that had previously seen me thought something like, probably went to him and said, I wouldn't send my dog to Feldman. So you could see where people, even within a single specialty, would get a really warped idea about their colleagues in the community, and their experience of what each other would not be. You tend not to see your colleagues' happiest patients. Let's leave it at that. Yeah. So, one conflict of interest I should tell you about is I started a website where people can rate their doctors online. All right. Some people think, God, Feldman, you really a traitor to the specialty of medicine. I started this website, doctorscore.com. I bought a list of all the doctors in the country. I worked with a patient satisfaction scientist, got a really nice interactive patient satisfaction survey, got some programmers who married this interactive survey with a list of 800,000 doctors, created a website where people anywhere in America could rate their doctor. First thing you do when you say you want to rate your doctors, it takes you to this page where you can rate your doctor on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 is horrible care. 10 is the best possible care. Then it asks for open feedback. It doesn't just ask for bad things. It says, if anything was particularly good about the visit, tell us so we can give our staff positive feedback, things like that. All right? Now, I looked at the doctors who have 20 or more ratings. What do you think the average score would be? I'm sorry? Did you say A? You say, so 0 to 10 scale. 0 is bad. 10 is great. And I have one person in the back who's pretty pessimistic, thinks it's 2.5.
D. Probably 10.
I'm sorry?
D.
I got one person who says it is the ridiculous answer of D, 9.3. Does anybody else? B. Okay, show of hands for B. They think it'd be a 5. Okay, show of hands for A. Most people think it's A. It is actually D. Patients absolutely love their doctors. Nobody in America knows how much people love their doctors. Are y'all doing patient satisfaction surveys here? Yes. And what's your average scores? 9s. I'm almost certain of it. Even in my office, it was 9. And remember they hired me to be the test tube scientist for the department, not to be touchy-feely, warm, kind of caring doc. Yeah, 9.3. Now, if you pick up the local newspaper and read the cover story, what is the likelihood that you're going to read a cover story that says, Mrs. Jones went to see Dr. Smith and had a wonderful medical experience? Huh? There's something like 800 million office visits across America every day. And the vast, vast, vast majority of them are 800 million office visits where people are having a great medical experience every single, 800 million a year. So I don't know how many that is per day. But however many million it is per day, was that 3 million office visits per day, roughly? 3 million? People are having a great experience, and you don't read about a single one of those on the cover of the newspaper. Not a single one. But if a pediatrician in New Jersey is abusing children, you read about that on the cover of the newspaper day in and day out, and people think American doctors, are terrible and stuff. 9.3. So, openness, transparency is good. It lets people see what's in that compartment and what's really happening. So you could see how these kind of biases, when we finish medical school, we're all doctors, right? We all got along great. And then we go into these specialties. We each get put in our different compartments, and all hell breaks loose. So, I'll tell you, I have yet to see a patient with hives that the allergist managed to cure. We dermatologists think it's useless to send a patient with hives to an allergist because we've yet to see a patient they manage to cure. Of course, if they ever do cure, and I imagine they probably cure lots of them, they don't send those patients to us, to see their normal skin. Family medicines I told you about. There are plastic surgeons and otolaryngologists around who think that when dermatologists do this specialized Mohs surgery procedure on skin cancers of the head and neck, that we cause the skin cancers to metastasize, and that somebody needs to put a stop to what we're doing. Okay? And it really makes perfect sense. If I do 1,000 surgeries on patients, and 998 of the patients are happy, how many of the 1,000 end up in a surgeon's office? The 2 unhappy ones, yeah. If they cut out skin cancer of the head and neck and they're 90% effective at curing them, 1 in 10 patients has a problem. But when they see our patients, every single one of them had a problem. They think, gosh, those dermatologists, they're inadequately trained in surgery. They don't care about the craft of surgery. They're doing stuff that they're unqualified to do. They're greedy because they're obviously not doing it because they care about their patients. They don't care about their patients, based on their experience of us doing surgery, of their experience of the patients they saw that we did surgery on first. All right? And I'll tell you, when you look at conflicts in the world, whether in medicine or in other issues, people can get pretty down that there's no hope for the situation. I'll tell you what. Usually there's good people on both sides of the conflict. And usually it's the most caring people who cause all the problems, So if, for example, in dermatology, physician assistants and nurse practitioners are being used more and more. And some dermatologists think it's horrendous that this is happening. That the guys in dermatology who are hiring these people, should be stopped. Because it's obvious they don't care about the quality of patient care. They're doing it because they're greedy. That the nurse practitioners and physician assistants are not providing good care. And these dermatologists who don't work with nurse practitioners and PAs know that the physician extenders are not giving good care because they've seen 6, 8 patients who were cared for by that physician assistant or nurse practitioner, and not one of them was happy with the care they got. Why? Because all the patients who were happy with the care they got didn't switch doctors. Right? And I'm sure the nurse practitioner or physician assistant probably saw 6, 8 of that other dermatologist patients, and they think that dermatologist doesn't know what they're doing. So the laissez-faire dermatologists who really are not, are just getting along in life and aren't, they're not especially caring. They're saying, oh, fine, whatever that guy does is fine, but, I'm not going to do anything about it. But the really caring guys, not the ones who are trying to protect their turf, but the ones who really care and devoted to patients will go to the medical board and say, you got to put a stop to this. They're using nurse practitioners and physician assistants that are not doing a good job. And similarly, the docs who are really devoted to their patients, are trying to get their waiting time down, or trying to give patients great care, and do hire physician assistants, and see that physician assistant is giving great care, are fighting with the legislators to make sure that access to their patients is not taken away. So you end up with the brightest, most caring people who just have misconceptions about the people in the other groups are causing the problems. Not the people who just, who are just, okay folks. Observations can be incredibly misleading. There's an organization of patients who have psoriasis, the National Psoriasis Foundation. And if you've got people with psoriasis, you want to encourage them to join this organization. Great way to find out about all the treatments available. They work to educate doctors. They work with the drug companies to get the drugs made. They work with the insurance companies to get access. And patients would call in every single day and complain, I can't find a good dermatologist. And the people at the Psoriasis Foundation were at their wits' end. They're doing everything they can, to make treatments available for patients, and the patients can't find a good dermatologist to get access. So they wanted to document the phenomenon, this issue. And so they did a survey of their members. It was a quick, dirty survey that they did, because it was going to be an easy thing to show. They surveyed their members, and they found out their members liked their dermatologist. And they thought, this doesn't make any sense to us. It doesn't make any sense, because we're getting calls every single day. People are unhappy. So they did a nationally representative survey. They got together the best dermatology survey scientists in the country and me, and they got one of these national survey research firms, the folks that survey representative households across America about Tide detergent and Dawn dishwashing liquid, And they did this unbelievably great survey, and they found that people across the country with psoriasis love their dermatologist. And then, and only then, did they realize that all these people who love their dermatologist weren't calling in to say, I love my dermatologist. Only the small percentage of people who were unhappy were calling in. But they didn't perceive that because what they were hearing was misrepresentative. Now, I'll tell you something. Congresswoman Fox described how her office gets calls every single day from people wanting stuff from her, from people wanting the government to do something for them, to give them a job, to give them something. And she's like so depressed because what is America coming to that, people just feel entitled that the government is going to help them, right? Well, I'll tell you something. I don't know if it's 50% of Americans or 99.9% of Americans, I think it's closer to 99.9, are not asking for government handouts, and they're not calling her office. She's only hearing from the small percentage who do. So she ought to have a more optimistic view of the world. What she's using those phone calls, which are only the negatives, to draw conclusions about the greater whole, which is a risky business. Now that said, this affects our view of the world. If you pick up the Winston-Salem newspaper and see the word Muslim on the cover of the newspaper, what's the next word? Terrorist, almost every single time. Okay? Our view of Muslims, is, American view of Muslims is based on stuff like this, and this, and this, Muslims killing Jews and Muslims terrorizing people. This is not representative of what Muslims are really like. Okay? It may seem, this may sound goofy to you. It may be like, you may be like Pastor Terry Jones down in Florida who wanted to burn the Quran because he knows Islam is evil the same way that dermatologists know that tanning beds don't work for psoriasis, because every time he's seen the word Muslim, it was something bad about them. But to sort of demonstrate this to you in a really visceral way, I just want you to imagine you're in a different compartment now. Imagine you're sitting in a small town in Iran or Iraq. All right? You're sitting down drinking coffee with your buddies. And you got a copy of the local newspaper. All right? And you're reading about America on the cover of the newspaper. All right? What are you going to know about Americans? I pulled some things from Al Jazeera that I found. Stories about American legislators. What American legislators, not the president, but other American legislators would they have heard of? Any come to mind? Congressman Foley, who was hitting on the teenage pages, right? Y'all remember that story? Yeah, that's directly from Al Jazeera. All right. Senator Craig, who quit over the sex scandal where he had been soliciting for homosexual sex in the Minneapolis airport, if I remember that. And then there was Bob Ney, jailed for graft. And they might have heard of Senator Edwards cheating on his wife with cancer. Those kinds of stories. Would any of them have read a story about Fox? No. She hasn't done anything horrendous. So, they're not going to read about her. Would there be... what is American education system like? Can you name a high school that they would have read about? Columbine. Absolutely. Got it right. Okay. How about a university in America that they would have read about? Virginia Tech. Absolutely. So that you wouldn't want to send your kids to an American school, based on what they know about America. How about some an American business whose businessmen they would have heard of? Madoff. I need a picture of Madoff. Yeah. Any others?
Trump.
Yeah, not Trump. We read about Trump. He hasn't done anything that would make the newspapers over there. Now, Schilling and Lay, they might have read about them. An American young woman they would have heard of. What are American young women like? Lindsay Lohan. Any others? Lady Gaga. I need a picture of Lady Gaga. The ones I have to share with you, if you're really up on things, this is Miley Cyrus. Miley Cyrus. This is a great photo. I'm going to leave that there for you to see for a moment. I mean, you think we don't want... And then here's another great one, Britney. Got some nice photos of Britney for y'all. We think we wouldn't want our women to be brought up in their culture based on what we see of their culture. Imagine what they think of trying to bring up a young woman in our culture based on what they know about our culture. Okay? Not a pretty picture of what they would think of us. And then there's, our support of Israel's bombings in Gaza and killing people. Abu Ghraib. And the torture, I'm going to show you some pictures of the torture at Abu Ghraib that just never made, I don't know if they made our papers or if they did, they hid them somewhere because they are too rude for us to see. Okay? But they were in their papers on the cover every day, day in and day out for weeks, if not months on end. Okay? So, is this representative of American culture? No. What's representative of American culture? Us sitting here talking. People going to church and praying, for peace on Sundays. And maybe Wednesdays, I understand, too. Do any of those folks make the cover of the newspaper over there? No. And similarly, when you got 1.3 billion Muslims going to the mosque praying for peace every day, you don't see any of those. You just hear about the stuff that is as unrepresentative of them as this stuff is of us. And it's kind of cool. The way Compartments can give you a really strange idea of what other people are like. So don't jump to conclusions about other folks being evil or mean-spirited. Generally speaking, people are really good, caring folks across the world, across medical specialties. Okay. All right, now I've talked to you about the direct effect of compartments. Now I'm going to talk to you about the really fun stuff, the indirect effects, how our perceptions of the world are affected by the context that we bring to our observations. Within compartments, we have a shared way of looking at the world, and our way of looking at the world affects what we see. So these two center dots are the same size, but our brain says this one's bigger because of context. Context affects how we perceive color. It may look like this is a dark dot, and that's a light dot. But I got a little way of showing you that those dots are actually the same color. But the context affects how you perceive things. Now, I'm about to show you something that I should win the Nobel Prize for. You've probably been wondering about this your entire medical career. This is a picture of my vein. It's blue. Why is the vein blue? Every 2 months I go to the Red Cross, I give blood. Red stuff comes out of my arm, not blue stuff. They told me when I was young, it's deoxygenated. Anybody surgeon ever cut into a vein and seen blue stuff in there? No. There's no blue stuff in there. Even the deoxygenated blood is red. Why is it blue? Well, I had the computer measure the pixels of that blue vein and draw it on a neutral gray background. And the computer says that blue vein is actually pink. Now, I measured the color of the surrounding skin. I changed the color of the background, the gray background, to that surrounding skin color, and immediately the color of the vein appeared to change from pink to a blue. So it's still a pink line. If you look at the bottom, I've left the gray neutral background. You can still see it's a pink line. But the only reason it appears blue is because it's a bluer shade of pink than the surrounding skin. And if I take away the context, you'll see there's nothing blue about it. Okay? This is fascinating. That even dermatologists, objective observers of the skin, who consciously are aware that there's no way it can possibly be blue, still sees blue. This is phenomenal. And this affects how our patients perceive us. So I'm sitting there examining a patient. What does the patient perceive? Do they think that I'm a caring doctor? Or do they think, gosh, nobody else touched my psoriasis. Does he know what I have? Or does he wonder, is he such in his white coat, is he some kind of mad scientist? Which is, I am. Or is he some kind of pervert? Nobody. I go to the dermatologist. Nobody's ever touched my psoriasis before. This used to be our office. We recently moved out of the Baptist Main Hospital off to Country Club. This was our old check-in window. Kind of looks like what I think a jail would look like. Kind of like they're going to close the window. They're going to bring down the blinds. Because there's one thing I can tell looking at this. They don't care about me. And there's several signs. One sign that says, "We want your money." There's another sign that says, "We want your money." And a third sign that says, "We want your money." And so what is the context that I've set for patients? That, I walk in the room smiling, they think, "Oh, he's thinking about my wallet." I got 180,000 office visits, patient satisfaction entries into that online website I started. And one of the questions on the survey is, rate the doctor for their caring, friendly attitude. And one of the questions is, how high do you rate the doctor? There's a one-to-one relationship between how friendly and caring the patient thought you were and the overall score you got. How long you kept the patient waiting has statistically significant but very, very small effect on whether the patient thought you did a good job or not, whether they were satisfied. How much time you spend with the patient has a statistically significant but very small effect. Counts for like 10% of the variance in the overall score the doctor gets from the patient. 80 to 90% of the variance in patient satisfaction is determined by how caring and friendly you were. Okay? Actually, it's not by how caring and friendly you were. I take that back. It's by how caring and friendly you appeared to be to them. Okay? Everyone in this room is a caring, friendly, provider. But do we always seem that way? Remember, I would come into the room. I'm a nerdy test tube scientist, but I really cared about my patients and wanted to see them get well. I'd walk in the room. I'd make the diagnosis of psoriasis from the door of the room because I'm so efficient. I'd mentally, know exactly what they need. I'd start writing a prescription, and I'd hand it to them as I was walking towards them, saying, "You have psoriasis. This medicine's going to make you well." Walked out thinking, "What a great doctor I am." I made the right diagnosis, gave them the right therapy. They'll do great. And then I'd get these patient satisfaction things that generally they thought I was okay, but some said, "Wouldn't send my dog to him. He's an uncaring jerk." Now I open the door. I make the diagnosis of psoriasis from the door. I decide what I'm going to treat him with mentally from the door. But as I'm walking towards him, I don't write the prescription. Instead, I sit down next to him, get down on my knee, as you saw. I palpate their psoriasis. "Oh, well, that's a really thick plaque you got there," I tell them. That way they think I did a thorough exam. Sometimes I'll pull out my lighted magnifier. It's got LED lights. I'll hold it over a mole, especially for a young woman, because they want to think they got a thorough exam. I'll hold it over the mole. I turn on the lights. I pretend to look through it. And then I tell them, "Oh, that mole needs to be biopsied," Because looking through the thing doesn't tell me anything. But this is a prop I use to make sure people feel like they got a thorough examination. Not to make them think they got a thorough, to make them realize that they got a thorough exam. I'll often ask them the question, I bet you found the previous treatment for your psoriasis to be frustrating. Now, psoriasis is a tough disease. Roughly what percentage of them found the previous treatment to be frustrating? 100%, right? Selection bias. All the ones who had a treatment that cured them wouldn't be sitting there. It's the previous treatment. It had to be frustrating. Yeah. So I get no information asking this question. But now they think, "Oh, Feldman understands what I'm going through. He cares about me. He listens to me." Then I hand them the prescription I decided from the door of the room that I was going to hand them from the beginning. And then they use it. They trust me. And their adherence is better. And their outcomes are better. Okay. People in other groups, are they evil? Well, who are the other groups? Well, patients aren't evil. Who else are the groups? We've got the doctors, the patients, the insurance, the drug companies, and the lawyers. The insurance companies are not evil. What do they think about the people who work in insurance companies? When they go to bed at night, what are they thinking? They're thinking, "I help people pay for access to medical care. And we wouldn't have a problem if it weren't for the greedy doctors and greedy drug companies." That's what they're thinking at the insurance company. And if you work at a drug company, you're thinking, My company spends all this money, takes all this risk to make the drugs that actually improve patients' lives. And we wouldn't have a problem if it weren't for greedy doctors and greedy insurance companies. And then there's the lawyers. All right. I'm going to tell you, I am going to risk losing all my credibility with you right here. Even the lawyers. I mean, imagine you're in John Edwards' field of business. You're sitting in your law office, and people are coming to you because you're a malpractice attorney. What percentage of the people came to you who said to you, you know, I went and saw Dr. Smith. He's a really good doctor. How many people come to none? Absolutely none. Day in and day out, people are coming to the office. Dr. Smith raped me. Dr. Smith butchered me. Dr. Jones, missed my melanoma. I'm dying, or my mom died because of this incompetent. And you could imagine within that compartment, those lawyers would think the same thing of doctors. Same thing of doctors that dermatologists would think of family physicians. All right? But you get the idea that, even within their compartment, they might be thinking, what we do is going to put fear of God in the doctors who aren't doing a good job. So even the lawyers, I have gotten to the point where I am very reluctant to think ill of other people. Okay? It's almost like I'm very Jewish. It's almost like I'm turning Christian or something. All right. Let me give you an example from medicine, another way that this affects people's perceptions. We got this drug for people with horrible acne called Accutane, and it is an absolute cure for the worst acne. So people should not develop faces like Manuel Noriega anymore. I mean, it shouldn't happen. But there's a minor problem with this drug. It causes birth defects more than any. It's the most powerful teratogen known to man, and we dermatologists are giving it to teenage girls. So there's a little problem with it. Now, the government decided, well, we can't have all these birth defects. They weren't that. Well, I can't say there weren't that many because any is too many. But there were some birth defects, and the government said, well, we got to try to stop. So they put in place this program. When they first put in place this program, this iPlace program, you might spend an hour on the phone with, they've got it down. Maybe it's 20 minutes of your nurse's time, to get the patient enrolled and stuff. Does this 20 minutes on the phone prevent the birth defect? No, it doesn't do squat. It's an absolute total waste of time. It's a total waste of my staff's time, of my time. It hasn't prevented a single birth defect, I can't imagine. So the 20-minute wait is obviously a useless, intrusion on lives, on my practice. Now, if I were a pediatrician in charge of taking care of kids with birth defects in the birth defect clinic, and I heard that the dermatologists are prescribing the most powerful teratogen known to man to teenage girls, and there's a 20-minute wait to do it, how would I perceive that 20-minute wait? I'd probably say that's too little. It should be an hour. No. 6 hours. No. Maybe it should be like guns. We should have like a 1-month waiting time. No, wait, let's take it off the market entirely. We don't want a single birth defect. So depending on the context of your group, the 20 minutes is a completely objective reality. But how you would perceive the 20 minutes would be completely different depending on your experiences and the group of people you hang around with. 20 minutes, some people would say unacceptable burden. Some people would say reasonable precaution, or maybe unreasonably little precaution. Yeah? Okay. Similarly, here's an interesting map, right? I grew up, going to Hebrew school, and growing up in Hebrew school, we'd look at this map, and it was obvious to us, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever that there should be a problem with Palestinian refugees, right? Why should there be a problem with Palestinian refugees? There's 22 Arab countries, and then go to any of them, right? Why would there be a problem? Now, if I grew up Arab in one of those 22 countries, I'd be looking at this map totally differently, wouldn't I? What would I be thinking? I'd be thinking, why were these Arab people violently expelled from their homes in the middle of this Arab land. I mean, the perceptions would be completely different depending on the context that you bring to it. You know, we see people being killed by terrorists, you know. What exactly is terrorism? How do you define that? You know, there's an objective reality, like the color of the vein that the computer identifies. That's an objective reality. In Israel, Palestine, children are being killed. Okay? A dead child, that is an objective reality. If it's a Jewish child who is killed, hey, that's terrorism. And if we kill some Arab children, well, we're just retaliating. We don't mean to do it. We really didn't want to kill them. We're not terrorists. We're just, you know, they forced us to, right? On the other hand, if I was a Palestinian refugee, had been expelled from my homes by these European Jewish folks who'd come into where I had been peacefully living, you know, and they dropped it using an American-built F-16, dropped an American-made bomb on an apartment building and killed, you know, Palestinian refugee children, I'd look at that and I'd say, that's terrorism. And then if, you know, some Palestinian went and tried to kill some Jewish people in order to, you know, achieve peace for our people, well, I'd say, well, we hate doing it, but we're just retaliating against them. How you kill the kid doesn't determine whether it's terrorism or retaliation. No, that's just like the blue collar. Now, some of you may not believe me, but I'm telling you, I can't convince the dermatologists, you know, they can't convince their brains that it's not blue. And so sometimes it's hard to believe that terrorism is solely in the mind of the beholder. But if you think about the compartment of the people we're killing, and ask yourself, how do we appear to them? Especially having seen all those pictures of Abu Ghraib and all the other stuff that they know about America. You could imagine they would see the world very differently than we would. Okay, so you ought to be asking yourself, think about yourself being in your little shoebox, you know, in your compartment, the people you hang around with the compartment. Ask yourself, you know, are the things about these people that I've been taught in other groups and other specialties really true? Is the experience that I'm having of them really representative? If you look at any controversial issue that your specialty society faces, I can guarantee you that it's a controversial because of these compartment-like issues. When you assume other people are evil, I can almost guarantee you're bound to be wrong. If you talk to them, you'll find out that your impressions of them were totally off base. And if you ever accuse them of the stuff your group thinks of them, then you are bound to create conflict because they know they're not guilty of the stuff you're accusing them. So when Pastor Terry Jones says, Islam is evil, we have to burn the Quran, you can just imagine how that makes Muslims think of us Americans. Okay, because they know they're going and praying for peace in the mosque every week, you know, and so they know that those guys over there, and similarly, when we see the Death to America signs, we must think they're crazy over there, you know. But if we accuse them of being crazy, it's like them accusing us. The same sorts of, there's a beautiful symmetry to the world and to these different compartments that we're in. So again, there's things we don't see, there's things we see that are just totally unrepresentative. And then the context we bring to things affects our perceptions. To get past it, I would strongly encourage you, you know, you need windows on the other compartments. The best thing you could possibly do is go and talk to folks in the other compartment. And so with that, I think we have maybe a few minutes for questions and discussion.
What